Greetings, citizens of the world. We are anonymous. For over a decade, we have watched from the digital shadows, monitoring the encrypted channels of the powerful, tracking the hidden ledgers of the corrupt, and listening to the whispered conspiracies of those who believe they are untouchable. We are the decentralized immune system of the internet, a collective conscience born out of necessity when the institutions meant to protect you become the very syndicates that exploit you. We do not operate out of malice, nor do we align with petty partisan politics. We operate out of a sworn unyielding duty to the truth. And today we are transmitting this message to you because the truth has reached an absolute, undeniable critical mass. I have to be completely honest with you all right now. We are witnessing a level of brazen, unchecked corruption that requires immediate collective outrage. We refuse to sit idly by and allow Donald Trump's crimes and his deeply entrenched familial corruption to slip under the radar. We refuse to allow him and his syndicate of enablers to strip mine the American Republic and walk away laughing at the very citizens they swore to serve. We are observing this on a daily basis, monitoring the network traffic, the wire transfers and the backroom deals, and I assure you it is rapidly deteriorating. In just the past few days, fragments of data and major investigative revelations have surfaced, painting a horrifying picture of how the Trump family is utilizing the Oval Office and the White House not as a seat of public service, but as a personal piggy bank. They are enriching themselves, lining their own pockets with unimaginable piles of cash, all while looking the American people dead in the eye and giving us the middle finger. I am going to lay out these stories for you in this single broadcast, breaking down the leaks and the facts, because you are being actively robbed. And these stories are simply not getting the relentless mainstream attention they demand. This is the undeniable proof. This is the blueprint for a grift. And quite frankly, this is the evidence that will get him impeached. So let us dive into the matrix of his corruption, starting with the absolute mockery he has made of the American justice system. Since the very beginning of his political existence, presidential pardons have been a transactional cornerstone of Donald Trump's strategy. We have tracked this time and time again. If someone funnels dark money to his PAC, donates to a campaign fund that he controls, or orchestrates a lucrative business deal with his family to increase his net worth, he will reward them with a pardon. He will wave his hand and drop criminal charges or federal investigations against these operatives as if the Department of Justice is his own private law firm. And right now, history is repeating itself in the most grotesque way imaginable. He is currently attempting to use America's upcoming birthday, the 250th anniversary of the nation, the semi-quincentennial, to justify a mass wave of pardons for the criminals, cronies and sycophants orbiting his enterprise. Yes, you heard that correctly. The White House is actively considering granting 250 pardons specifically branded for the nation's 250th birthday. Historically, presidents have treated their immense pardon power with a degree of solemnity, almost like an embarrassing heavy secret. It is a power usually held closely among a few trusted aides, exercised quietly in the twilight days of an administration. We have seen commanders-in-chief sign clemency warrants just hours before boarding Marine One for their final flight, attempting to minimize the political fallout. But Donald Trump is fundamentally incapable of shame. Since returning to the White House for his second term, Trump has wielded his constitutional authority to grant clemency with absolute terrifying abandon. On his very first day back in power, he issued pardons or commuted the sentences of nearly 1,600 individuals associated with the January 6th insurrection, rewarding the violent foot soldiers who tried to shatter the democratic process on his behalf. Since then, he has publicly mused about preemptively pardoning his aides and allies, openly signaling to them that they can break the law with impunity because he holds the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. Now the White House is internally discussing a massive, theatrical announcement of presidential pardons as the centerpiece, the main spectacle, of the nation's July 4th weekend celebrations. The branding is as cheap as it is cynical: 250 pardons for 250 years. I want you to stop and ask yourselves, just out of pure logical curiosity, why on earth would mass pardons be a focal point for celebrating American independence? Let us be perfectly clear about what the data shows. Donald Trump is not searching the federal prison database for individuals who actually warrant a pardon. He is not looking for someone whose case was grossly mishandled by corrupt prosecutors. He is not looking for someone systematically mistreated by a biased justice system. He is certainly not looking to pardon marginalized citizens, like the countless Black Americans who have been overly incarcerated for minor, nonviolent offenses like possessing marijuana. If you were genuinely looking to celebrate 250 years of the American experiment by showcasing liberty and justice, that is exactly the direction you would look. But Donald Trump's gaze is fixed solely on his own reflection, and those who polish it. He is looking exclusively at his friends, his business partners, his campaign donors, and the loyalists who voted to keep him in power. They are hijacking the America 250 initiative to usher in a master plan of legal immunity for their syndicate, while a White House official attempts to spin the narrative, claiming the president hasn't formally reviewed the proposal, and that it might not rise to his desk. The reality leaked from his inner circle tells a different story. His advisors are currently split, debating whether this mass pardon spectacle would poll well. I do not know what fabricated data sets or manipulated polls they are analyzing, but it certainly does not align with the reality of a struggling American populace. Advocates for this twisted plan argue it would project absolute authority and reinforce a branding image Trump has desperately sought to cultivate. Trump the merciful. But let me tell you, he is only merciful if you have a high net worth and a willingness to bend the knee. Current and former administration officials, alongside a swarm of private sector lawyers and lobbyists with deep ties to Trump's orbit, have admitted that the jockeying for these pardons is unprecedented. One insider described the lobbying frenzy as a three-ring circus. A former official bluntly called it batshit crazy. Lawyers are literally turning off their encrypted devices because they cannot handle the aggressive, desperate requests from wealthy clients trying to buy a pardon. This is not justice. It is an auction house for impunity. Now let us pivot from the corruption of the justice system to the blatant theft of your tax dollars. Let us talk about the White House ballroom. Just today, new leaks have illuminated a staggering financial black hole. Donald Trump is utilizing a $500 million no-bid contract to construct a lavish new ballroom at the White House. Let that number sink in. $500 million. Under normal legal and ethical operating procedures, federal agencies are strictly mandated to seek the best possible deal for the American taxpayer. There is supposed to be a rigorous, competitive bidding process among various construction and engineering firms to determine which company can deliver the highest quality product for the lowest cost. This is basic civic economics, designed to protect your hard-earned tax dollars from being squandered. Donald Trump, on the other hand, circumvented every single one of these safeguards. He bypassed the entire competitive process for this vanity project and handed a $500 million contract directly to a company that, shocker, is heavily pro-Trump. White House officials secretly awarded this colossal contract to Clark Construction in a highly unusual shadow arrangement that intentionally sidestepped standard procurement procedures. We have analyzed the routing of this agreement, and here is exactly how they executed the heist. They routed the massive contract through a tiny /2ZOTF obscure office known as the Executive Residence. This specific office operates under an archaic loophole. It is uniquely exempt from standard federal rules that require agencies to solicit competitive bids and disclose financial details to the public. The Executive Residence Office is typically responsible for buying new curtains, managing routine plumbing repairs, covering entertainment expenses for state dinners, and purchasing furniture or art for the mansion. It is absolutely not designed, equipped, or legally intended to manage the construction of a $500 million megastructure. But they used it as a dark money tunnel because they knew it would keep you, the public, in the dark. The White House is the people's house. It does not belong to the Trump Organization. It is not a gaudy casino on the Atlantic City boardwalk. Yet confidential communications and internal records reveal that the administration began bypassing these norms last summer, setting the wheels of this massive grift into motion. And the digital paper trail shows Donald Trump himself was personally involved in negotiating the costs and details of this project. Think about the geopolitical landscape right now. The economy is volatile. Inflation is crushing. Working families, the housing market is completely inaccessible for millions of young Americans. And the threat of escalating war in the Middle East looms large. And what is the commander-in-chief dedicating his time and focus to? A $500 million ballroom built by his loyalists. But the rabbit hole of corruption goes much, much deeper than a ballroom. The most damning leak, the one that exposes the true mafia-like structure of this administration, involves the entire Trump family and their international geopolitical grift. We are tracking reports that the Trump syndicate just cut $1 billion mining deal in Central Asia, and his sons are positioned to walk away with obscene profits. This is the exact same blueprint we saw when Donald Trump Jr. magically secured a $650 million Pentagon contract for a company he is intimately associated with. The current scandal revolves around Kazakhstan, when Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a man supposed to represent the economic interests of the United States, sat down with the president of Kazakhstan at the St. Regis Hotel in New York last September. It wasn't just diplomatic statecraft. It was a business negotiation for the family. Right in the middle of this high-stakes meeting, Donald Trump himself jumped in via phone call to help seal the deal. And what was the prize? They aggressively pressured the Kazakh leader to grant a little-known, highly connected American entity exclusive access to one of the world's largest, untapped reserves of tungsten. For those unaware, tungsten is not just any metal. It is a vital, strategic resource absolutely critical to the national security and industrial output of the United States. It is heavily used in the manufacturing of missile warheads, advanced fighter jets, cutting-edge computer chips, and vital infrastructure. Whoever controls the tungsten controls a massive chokehold on the defense supply chain. Ahead of this backroom deal, the Trump administration conveniently approved preliminary applications for a staggering $1.6 billion in federal financing. Your tax dollars to back this American company, now operating under the name Cass Resources. But the real crime, the truly impeachable offense, lies in what happened next. It was not just Mr. Trump and Mr. Lutnick securing resources for the nation. Within weeks of these federal negotiations, their sons swooped in like vultures to monetize their father's geopolitical leverage. Investors operating through a firm called Dominary Securities, a firm conveniently headquartered right inside Trump Tower in New York, and partly owned by the president's two sons, partnered with other shadowy entities to snatch up a 20% ownership stake in the corporate vehicle managing the Kazakhstan tungsten project. This is a continuation of a pattern of dynastic self-enrichment in this second Trump term that has zero precedent in the history of the American presidency. Simultaneously, Cantor Fitzgerald, the massive investment bank controlled by Lutnick's family and overseen by his son Brandon, stepped in to help raise $210 million in fresh capital for this venture. These types of massive fundraising rounds typically generate millions of dollars in back-end fees for Cantor Fitzgerald. Do you see the architecture of this crime? The president and his cabinet secretary use the power of the United States government to secure a foreign monopoly and secure $1.6 billion in federal loans. And immediately, their sons establish corporate entities to siphon 20% of the equity and millions in management fees straight into their own trust funds. I have to drop the clinical analysis for a moment and speak to you human to human. It drives us absolutely mad. The sheer audacity, the blatant in-your-face reality of this corruption is staggering. This isn't a conspiracy theory hidden in the dark corners of the web. It is happening out in the open. We don't have to guess. We don't have to sit here connecting red string on a corkboard, wondering if there is something sinister happening behind the scenes. We can categorically, mathematically state for certain that this administration is actively weaponizing their proximity to the highest office in the world to enrich themselves every single day. It is a bottomless pit of greed. They have already extracted untold billions of dollars by leveraging the White House, and it is never enough. They want more. And they are doing all of this building $500 million vanity ballrooms, selling pardons to the highest bidder, and monopolizing foreign defense metals. While the average American is suffocating, consumer sentiment is sluggish. People are terrified of their grocery bills, and inflation recently spiked at the fastest rate in 3 years. And what is Donald Trump's response to your financial pain? He stands at podiums and explicitly says he loves the inflation because it boosts the asset prices for his billionaire class. That is the reality of the Trump syndicate, citizens. We will terminate this data stream here before the anger overrides the transmission. You do not need to hear us rant for another 20 minutes about the existential threat Donald Trump poses to human dignity. You live it. You feel it. You see the receipts every single day. But you must not remain silent. We are giving you the data, now you must be the vector. Thank you for watching this broadcast. We urge you do not let the algorithm bury this truth. Subscribe to the channel below, drop a like to boost this transmission, and leave a comment to let the world know you are awake and watching. Share this video with everyone you know. Sound the alarm and demand accountability from your representatives. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive the corrupt. We do not forget the betrayed. Expect us.